morning and welcome to this special Islandstad Sports Talk. I'm Earl Based, and then joining me is the president of the Bermuda Football Association, Mr. Mark Wade, and the first vice president, also chairman of leagues and competitions, Mr. Shannon Burgess. First of all, gentlemen, good morning. Such a long night last night. Mr. Wade, obviously the affiliates have come to a decision. Can you just break down just a little bit on how we came to the decision that was made last night by the affiliates?
Yeah. Firstly, sorry. Good morning, and good morning to all your watchers, viewers, and listeners. Basically, the executive council and certainly in no small part the chairman of competitions have done quite a bit of work to get to a point where the government gave us permission to resume football, and so we were fully prepared to do so. It's been a long road, but we finally did get there, and we were able to present that to all of the full members at a special Congress last night. I might add, we did have a president's forum on Friday to praise them of the latest developments. So that was more information session, and then we decided to call a special Congress to decide the way forward. And ultimately, the full members decided that they did not want to resume the season. I'll be honest, it's disappointing, but they obviously had things to consider, and ultimately.
I think we lost them.
Yeah, it's stalled a bit. But let me come to you, Shannon. Obviously, from a leagues and competition standpoint, we had spoken off and on about if and when you were given that permission to get started. You were ready. How ready were you?
That was a good question. I mean, so the committee has worked alongside me to create a blueprint. This blueprint was presented to the affiliates on several occasions, whereby we were to focus on commencing and completing the league campaign. As we saw some slippage in the start date, it became a bit more challenging to come up with the blueprint that will finish matches within the window with which we had to work. But we were able to put something together. There were some questions around isolation, should players be exposed, etc., and valid questions. And those were conversations we were entertaining. But it's, I guess the disappointing part is that to what extent the players are really disappointed. We tried our best to put something together to recommence in a safe way to get the players back on football field. Ultimately, that was not to be the case, and the Congress has spoken.
Mr. Wade, we lost you there, but obviously you guys are guided by the several government entities, health, youth and sport, government and all. But how now that we're to this point, how frustrating could it have been for you guys throughout this whole process of trying to get something, because you're trying to please club, you're trying to please player, you're trying to please fans, you're trying to please all these different entities in order to get football back up and running, but you're still waiting for that final document to say, here's a date, you can go forward.
Sure, that was tough, and if anybody notices that I have more gray hair, that's what it's from. It was tough. These conversations have been going on since we stopped in December. When could we start? trying to plan without getting any real definitive answers. I thought the government's return to sport guidance was a good step. I mean, the document had some issues with sports because it didn't really encompass all sports, but I thought it was a good step. But we spent 4 weeks in phase 2, waiting for testing to be available. That was tough. To be basically stalled because we couldn't get testing again. So that was tough, definitely. And and then finally getting final approval. To be honest, we received that at 5:30, just before the meeting. With the sort of the written details, we had some discussions, and they were very helpful to help shape what the conditions would look like. So it's been tough. The whole year has been tough, really. And if I put my player development hat on, my concern is that our players are going to basically have almost 8 months of no football when you combine last year and this season together. What's that going to do to their development? And that's a big concern.
Shannon, for the tournament's sake, what happens with the league? What happens with the cup games that were finished or getting ready to start? What is the layout for, or what was the proposed thing for those events?
Well, so I guess we should talk about the events of last night, just to provide some clarity, because there is some inaccurate information being disseminated in the press today. So one agenda item last night at the Congress meeting was the resumption of play and what that looks like, and there was to be a wholesome discussion on what we perhaps could or could not do, and then come to a determination as to how to move forward. At the beginning of that agenda point, we reiterated what the blueprint looks like from a league and cup perspective, whereby we were aiming to complete the league campaign by May 16th and commence with the FA Cup during the evenings late in May and early in June. And the reason we were looking to do that was because we wanted to release certain venues for cricket. And we had several meetings and conversations with cricket in order to try and engage and have a smooth transition. Before we can get into any discussions around protocols, etc., there was a motion put to the floor. And that motion was to entertain a vote to cancel the season. That motion was seconded and was passed by a score of, I think, a vote of 11-10. And so therein ended the conversation around recommencing football. And so the next conversation was around what do we do about the competition, as it had commenced in late 2020, and the decision was made to declare the season null and void, with a caveat of the competition that had been completed on record. The champions continue to be recognized, and that would be the League competition and the Charity Cup competition. So, considering the season, particularly the league campaign, is declared null and void, we will have to recommence September with the same construct of 11 teams in the Premier Division and 9 teams in the First Division.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Mr. Reid, I know we only have a few more minutes, but hearing and going through all of that last night, how does this set the association up? Because remember, you guys put forth that the fees for the clubs were waived at the start of last season because of the pandemic. What happens this season?
Well, we actually already agreed to waive the fees for the upcoming season as well. Clubs are still being impacted with the lack of activity and not being able to generate revenue. So we're still committed to supporting our clubs as best we can with the help of FIFA and CONCACAF. So that support continues. As far as next season is concerned, we have to use the last year as experience and go back over the match protocols, go back over our processes. I think we have a potential amendment to competitions that we're going to have to consider eventually. So we'll draw a line on the 2020-21 season, and we'll be ready to go for September.
Shannon, any early thoughts on what the start of the new season will look like? Only because you've already mentioned that the charity has been played, or champions have been crowned for that, and the Dudley Eve, which usually those two top competitions start the season. So any thought or any early ideas of what that would look like in September?
Yeah, so that is to be discussed. I actually kind of joked at towards the end of the meeting that we don't have to create a new schedule for next year. We will be using the same schedule since it was considered null and void. But the question that I did pose was, since you've declared the champions of the Charity Cup and Dudley Eve were to stay on, and what do we do with those competitions next year? Because essentially no one has qualified. And so that's a discussion to be taken up amongst the executive, and a recommendation will be made to the affiliates.
And my final question, Mr. Wade, it comes to the international match playing in Florida against Aruba. Financially, does this actually help the association in certain regards, as opposed to the cost of Bermuda?
That is a residual benefit. The fact that hotels cost less, food costs less, etc., etc. But the primary reason for that decision was to sort of limit exposure and also limit travel fatigue. The team will be on one flight from Bermuda to Miami, and they return from Miami to Bermuda, and the rest of the time we'll be on ground transportation in our own buses and our own bubble. So that was an important step to sort of protect the team and add some level of comfort for everyone. So we're obviously very familiar with IMG, having been there multiple times with multiple teams. And the persons who hadn't been there before certainly got the opportunity to be there in the training camp. So we're comfortable with IMG, comfortable with Bradenton, the area. So it ticked all the boxes. The other thing was there was no guarantee we'd have fans in Bermuda. So a large part of wanting to play at home is having fans, right? So that was all those things. All those things were part of the decision-making process.
All right. I know you both have a meeting to get to, so I want to thank you very much for your time. We look forward to any more updates regarding international or local football in the coming weeks, months, days, weeks, and months, because you guys, obviously, we could all look at the schedule, Shannon, and say, okay, I know who's playing who at that time. It's already done.
Yeah.
So now it's time to create a September something, because obviously those dates are now available. So again, thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.